What's up, Jets fans? Welcome to the latest edition of Jets Latest, where you get the latest on the Jets, Jets. I'm your host, the spitting statistician, Dane Martinez, and today we continue to look at the developing quarterback that is Justin Fields and some news and notes, some buzz about potentially a former Jet on the return to the green and white. And we start there. And I'm talking about former first round pick, former defensive captain, safety, all-pro safety, Pro Bowl safety, Jamal Adams. Now, Jamal Adams, as we know, was the 6th overall pick back in 2017. He's bounced around the league a little bit, been banged up with Seattle and with Detroit. But there was in the news recently about Jamal Adams maybe wanting to return to the green and white. Listen to what he had to say. He goes, "I would love to be back with the Jets and obviously finish it the right way. Man, that would be a dream come true. Just to patch up that relationship and kind of make it right. I would just come in as a seasoned vet, give game to the young cats, and help in any way, shape, or form I can. I know I can still play football. I'm healthy, and I know I can impact the game in a lot of ways. I just need that fair opportunity to come in and show what I can do." And here's the thing. I think that this is not likely, but possible. Here's why. Remember, he did make a Pro Bowl back in 2018. He was second team All-Pro in 2018, first team All-Pro in 2019. Here's what happened. His issues with the Jets were with the previous regime, all the way back to when Adam Gase and his crazy eyes were the head coach, when Joe Douglas was the GM. This is a new regime, to be sure, right? He went to Seattle after the Jets, and he was injured a lot. Never really had that kind of Pro Bowl form when he was with Seattle. However, last year, he played a couple of games before again getting hurt with the Detroit Lions. So he has some experience with Aaron Glenn. And I think this is another example of people wanting to come to the Jets, wanting to be down with Aaron Glenn. Do I think it's going to happen? Not necessarily. But here is the case. One, remember when I did my 53-man projection on the defensive side? We have the safeties as Cisco. We have Adams. And we now have the draft pick Malachi Moore, right? I did think, however, safety was something of a small weakness because Simpson is the 4th guy. I think Adams can come in, just like he said, as a vet, be better than Simpson, round out that room. But here's the bigger thing. Adams said he can come in, help some of the young cats. That would be Malachi Moore, okay? Maybe he could help in the growth of Malachi Moore. However, Adams is a different kind of safety. He is not the ball hawking safety that we talk about when it comes to Malachi Moore. He is more of a lay the lumber kind of support in the run game, blitz kind of guy. And this is the thing. What I have been talking about with the Jets in their new scheme, with Wilkes as the DC, with Aaron Glenn, he wants versatility. He wants to be able to bring blitzes from a lot of different places. He wants to have intentionality and key roles. And Adams is one of these specific kind of guys as an in-the-box kind of safety, as a run-supporting kind of safety that could fill a role. I don't think he's going to be a starter. I don't think he's the Pro Bowler that he was 5 or 6 years ago, but maybe there is an opportunity if he does, in fact, want to be humble, if he does, in fact, want to kind of repair his image with the green and white. Do I think it's necessarily going to happen? No, but I have said this, that there is room in the salary cap, and I do expect the Jets to sprinkle in some vet minimums. Maybe Jamal Adams could be that guy. He was, remember, a former captain for this team. I think it would only be in a limited role and with a very specific, intentional vision for how he could be used. The other thing I will say is, remember, there are a lot of examples of guys who were safeties and then come in and become linebackers. Sherwood was one of them. And at the linebacker level, we could use depth at the end as well. So I do think the type of safety that Jamal Adams is has a little bit of a utility for us, but it's just something to keep as a note. I don't think it's necessarily going to happen, but maybe if he was willing to come in on the cheap, it could be a reunion for the former first-round draft pick a few years ago for the New York Jets. Here's what I also want to talk about. I want to talk about Justin Fields again and some of the misconceptions around Justin Fields. A lot of people out there are almost thinking that he's like not an NFL caliber quarterback. And I think that's absolutely ridiculous, okay? Justin Fields is a first-round pick, and I believe there's a lot of reason to believe he could have one of these good second act stops here with the New York Jets. First of all, Tanner Engstrand is going to be a lot more creative with him, but honestly, I have been talking about his development as a passer. In minicamp, we have seen footwork looks better. Technique looks better. I believe in the importance of the offensive line. We should have a far better offensive line than he ever had in Chicago. We are wrapping sure-handed weapons around him, all sorts of supports. He has that familiar feel with guys like Garrett Wilson, even guys like Jeremy Ruckert and Josh Myers. But truth be told, I want to go into his actual stats and show you why Justin Fields is not some kind of, also ran joke quarterback. If you look at his stats last year in 6 starts with the Pittsburgh Steelers, first of all, the Steelers went 4-2 in his starts, okay? In those starts, he completed 66.3% of his passes. That is above league average. I keep on saying that he has improved his completion percentage every year from the 59% he had as a rookie. And if you see his yards, you see his touchdowns. First of all, a 5 touchdown to 1 interception ratio is absolutely strong. He took care of the football. If you pace that out, and I understand that is kind of an exercise whether he is going to stay on pace or not, look at what those numbers would have been and where they rank in the NFL. Okay, he threw for 1,106 yards in 6 games. That paces out to just under 3,100. Jordan Love threw for 3,000 yards. We're not talking about Jordan Love as some quarterback who can't hack it in the NFL or some absolute bust, right? He completed 297 passes if you go on the same pace. Tua had 291. Tua is not thought about as some absolute bust, right? He completed 66% of his passes. You know who else did that? Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold was in the comeback player of the year conversation. He had 5 touchdowns in 6 games. You pace that out, Drake May had 15 touchdowns, right? So these are comps that if he were playing the entire season, I don't think all of a sudden he's looked at as a laughing stock. Now, the 15 touchdowns, that's not a huge number. However, remember, he also ran in his 6 starts 55 times for 231 yards and 5 touchdowns. You add a pace of another 13 rushing touchdowns, 14 rushing touchdowns. Now, all of a sudden, Justin Fields accounts for 28 touchdowns on pace. Patrick Mahomes, for goodness sakes, accounted for 26. Now, again, I know this is an exercise saying, what if he stayed on pace? I'm just trying to set the context in the right way. I think the narrative is that somehow Justin Fields is doomed to be a backup, that he's not a starting caliber NFL quarterback. And I think that is absolutely false. Again, with the development, again, with the offensive line, again, with the weapons he will have at his disposal, again, with the run game and Breece Hall that he will have at his disposal. And then, again, we have to understand the dual threat nature of Justin Fields. Look, Justin Fields in just 6 starts ran for 231 yards and 5 touchdowns. You put a pace on that, that would be 647 rushing yards and almost 14 touchdowns. You know who ran for just around the same amount of yards? Jalen Hurts, and that was 3rd among quarterbacks. You know what 14 rushing touchdowns would be? Tied with Jalen Hurts, who led quarterbacks. Josh Allen had 12 quarterback touchdowns. No other quarterback in the NFL ran for more than 6 rushing touchdowns. Fields had 5, heck, in only 6 starts. Okay, so when you put all that together, and what I believe will be development, he looks better in mini camps and things of that nature. It really feels like the narrative around Justin Fields really undersells and undervalues his potential. So we'll see. Will he fully realize that? No, necessarily. But if he accounts for 25, 30 touchdowns, if he throws for, I showed you the Jordan Love number, which was 17th in the league. That's right in the middle. If he is an average passing quarterback and an elite running quarterback, what you in essence have is Jalen Hurts. And all I know is Jalen Hurts just took his team to a Super Bowl and became a Super Bowl MVP. So there's definitely the potential there if we build around him in the right way. And that's clearly what the green and white have been doing. Speaking of Jordan Love, speaking of Jalen Hurts, we're going to see both of those guys In the preseason, we have looked at the regular season schedule for the Jets. I do just want to tell you about the preseason schedule real quick. It starts with a road game, like I said, in Lambeau Field against the Packers on August 9th. To be quite honest, I like that first game being away and not in front of the fans, so there's no kind of idea of booing if they look bad or whatever. It is a quote-unquote business trip on Saturday, August 9th. Then we've got the Snoopy Bowl, as always, against the Giants. Not going to have to travel anymore. I think that is a good thing. They're going to be against the Giants on the 16th, and then a home game against the Eagles to finish up. Quite frankly, that's a good test. The fact that they always have the Eagles in that last game, that is a good test. That's when maybe some of the starters will be playing. It is a great litmus test to see yourself against the defending Super Bowl champions to get ready for the regular season. I will say this, though. You're not going to see a lot of starters. You may see more than normal because we are building something. We are building a culture. We need to build familiarity. So you may see the starters a little bit more than most this year. But one thing to note is that the new vogue in the NFL is to actually, outside of the preseason games, have a week of joint practices with another team. And that's where you really start to see some of those reps, some of those 1 versus 1 kind of reps, some of those starters versus starters where they actually try it out, where they actually kind of hit and practice hard, because it's more of a controlled environment as well, a little bit less of an injury risk. But that is the 2025 preseason schedule with games against the Packers, the Giants, and the defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles, which I think is a nice test to round out the preseason before we get into the regular season. So that'll do it for another episode here of Jets Latest. Remember to watch these videos, like these videos, subscribe to the channel, and if you want to hear more from me, the spitting statistician Dane Martinez, I am the host of the FTN Fantasy Show over on Sirius XM, Channel 87, the Fantasy Channel. We do more than just talk about the Jets. I'm talking NFL fantasy football. We're talking fantasy baseball, Major League Baseball. The NBA and NHL playoffs are ongoing right now. The Knicks right now in the Eastern Conference Finals, to be sure. FTN is a great site with all sorts of data sets, tools, simulations, content, the Discord, all sorts of stuff to really become a better sports bettor and a better fantasy player. But right here on Jets Latest, we will continue to talk throughout the week on what we are building. Mini camp is going on and so much more. Keep an eye on Jamal Adams. Could be one of those under the radar vet minimum sprinkles. And listen, when people start throwing shade and making jokes about Justin Fields, quite frankly, he was right there in the middle of the pack last year as a throwing quarterback. So some development, and of course, the dual threat nature is going to be a nice little added weapon, a nice little added element that the Jets offense has, quite frankly, never had. That'll do it for this episode of Jets Latest. We will see you tomorrow right here where you get the latest on the Jets, Jets. We'll see you then. We out of here. Peace.